Greetings, YouTube. The doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And we are going to be talking about the next weapon mastery in our series of weapon mastery reviews. And that weapon mastery is slow. So we are going to go over what it is. We're going to grade it. We're going to talk about what weapons have slow. We're going to talk about feats, classes, a race. I wouldn't say races, but we are going to talk about a race/species and some spells that go along with this too. So we're going to talk about everything associated with this and how you can really stack this up and power game this to the nth degree. So a lot to go over, a lot to talk about. Don't go anywhere and stay tuned. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or a comment. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. Don't forget to share this video. If you have any business inquiries, I have an email address that is in the channel description. And we've got two different adventures here, both available through Dungeon Masters Guild. Vault of the Worm for 3rd level characters and the Painted Rock for 4th level characters. Links below, so go to Dungeon Masters Guild and check them out. All right, let's get into it. Here is the weapon mastery itself. So you have to have a class that gets weapon masteries, and that opens up the weapon mastery itself if you have the weapon that has the mastery. That was a lot of masteries that I just said. So, slow. If you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to it, you can reduce its speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. If the creature is hit more than once by weapons that have this property, the speed reduction doesn't exceed 10 feet. So it is only associated with this property. However, if you hit a creature with other things that are going to reduce its speed is going to be reduced more. Meaning that if I hit it with a weapon that has slow, its speed is going to get reduced by 10 feet. If I then have a feat that stacks on top of that, that also reduces speed, then the speed is going to be reduced even further. So I like this kind of mechanic. I like it a lot. I like forced movement better, but stopping an enemy from coming near you is even better. So I like this so much, I'm going to give this a B+. I think this is one of the better ones. I think that Nick is a great one for all the extra attacks it does. I think that Push is a extraordinarily great weapon mastery, and I think Slow is in there as well. So, lots of good ones, but I think Slow is one of the best. So we're going to give it a B+, and it for all the different stuff that we're going to be able to use with it. So let's get rid of the arrow here, and let's get rid of the rating, and let's talk about weapons that are going to be able to use this slow weapon mastery. All right, here is the weapon table, and we have a number of weapons in here that do have slow. A lot of these are light or finesse weapons, which means that we should be thinking about perhaps dex-based characters or dex strength-based characters, like maybe a fighter or a rogue, but we're going to get into some of the classes here in a little bit. So the first weapon that we've got on our list is the club, and the club is a light weapon, meaning that we can make offhand attacks with other weapons if we follow all the rules with light. It has the slow mastery, which means if I hit something with the club, it's going to have its speed reduced by 10 feet. If I happen to have another light weapon in my other hand, I can use a bonus action to attack with that. Now, club is not a nick weapon, so that extra attack has to be as a bonus action and not as part of the attack action. So you have to kind of figure out and go around all of these different weapons in that way. All right, the next weapon that we have is a favorite for a lot of fighters and other classes that don't rely so much on ranged weapons, but need a ranged weapon every once in a while, and that's the javelin. So the javelin is thrown, meaning you can throw it 30 feet, and if you throw it from farther than 30 feet, you have disadvantage on the attack. It does piercing damage. That's really important to pay attention to the type of damage that these weapons do as well, because there's other things that can go along with that in addition to the slow based off of the weapon damage. So it's piercing. So it has slow, meaning that if I hit somebody with a javelin, then their speed will be reduced by 10 feet. And I can do this one at a range, which is great. All right, the next weapon that we have in our list is the light crossbow, which also does piercing damage. Remember, pay attention to the type of damage. And it requires ammunition, so it requires bolts. It has the loading property, meaning that you can only fire one ammunition from a loading weapon when using an action, a bonus action, or a reaction, regardless. So you have to get crossbow mastery, and I've got the crossbow build on the channel already. So, and that's with a heavy crossbow, not with a light crossbow. So if you have the crossbow mastery with this one, and we'll talk about that, you can get rid of that loading property. It's also two-handed, so you need two hands to use it, and then it has slow. So if you hit something with the light crossbow, it is going to have its speed reduced by 10 feet. All right, the next one we've got is the sling, which does bludgeoning damage. Pay attention to that, because we're going to talk about that when it comes to feats. And it also has ammunition, so it's got like sling stones or sling bullets. There's a range of 30 feet to 120 feet, so it's very similar to the javelin, and it has slow as well. So that is still a thing. If you hit something with a sling, it will have its speed reduced by 0 feet. Now those are all, and that's a lot. That's a lot of weapons that are in the simple weapon table. Now, if we go to the martial melee table, we get one weapon that has slow. So you notice here, we started at battle axe, and we go all the way down, and we're going all the way down to the bottom to a whip. And I like this option. Whips don't do a lot of damage, but they will do a lot of different things based off of what they do. So one, they do slashing damage, and this is going to be the only weapon that does slashing damage that has slow, and that's going to be important. It has finesse, meaning that we can use our strength or our dex mod to attack with it, which is also very important for the rogues and for fighters. It has reach, which means we get 5 feet extra on our area of attack with it. It's not a ranged weapon, it is a reach melee weapon, and it has slow. So things that are either 5 feet or 10 feet away, we can attack them, and they will have their speed reduced by 10 feet. The great thing about this is you can attack something that's not adjacent to you. You can hit it, you can do some damage to it, you can slow it, and then you can run away, and it is going to have to run after you at a slower speed, which is awesome. Now we get into the martial ranged, and we've got two different things. We're only going to talk about one of those because I don't use muskets or pistols in any of my games. Musket is one of the things that does do slow, but the longbow also does. And the longbow, piercing damage, it has ammunition, it uses arrows, of course. It's heavy, that's a big one, because we can use great weapon mastery with that. And it's two-handed, you need two hands. And it's slow, so if you hit somebody with a longbow, their speed is going to be reduced by 10 feet. So, let's talk now about some of the feats that go along with these, and I'm going to connect them back to some of these weapons. So pay attention, because it's a very intricate web of abilities and feats and weapon masteries and such. So now we're going to talk about feats and fighting style feats. There's a little bit of a difference between those feats you take at 4th level. There's origin feats, which you gain at 1st level, and then there's fighting styles, which certain classes get, certain classes don't. So the first one we're going to talk about is archery, which isn't necessarily archery. You would think archery was with bows only, but it applies to any ranged weapon attack. You get +2 to hit with any ranged weapon attack. So this one could be tied to the sling, the javelin. Those are all ranged weapon attacks. The bow, the long bow, or the light crossbow. So all of those would count. You get a bonus. it's a nice little thing. If you're going to be using those and you're going to be concentrating on using those type of weapons, especially the longbow and the light crossbow or the sling, then this is probably a good fighting style to take. All right, and I'm going to be looking down here. I've got some notes right below me, so I keep myself on track. And the next thing that we are going to be talking about, and we talked about this already, is Crossbow Master, because the light crossbow is on the list. So you will ignore the loading property if you take this for hand crossbows, heavy crossbows, or light crossbows. You can fire in melee, meaning if something is adjacent to you, you're not going to have disadvantage. And then with the light crossbow, you're not going to be able to dual wield because that's only for hand crossbows. So it's definitely something to think about if you're going to go the crossbow route. But with the light crossbow, you could attack multiple times. However, slow only works once. So we do have to pay attention to that. Okay, the next that we're going to talk about is Crusher. And that is because several of those weapons that were on the list did bludgeoning damage. And that means that this feat, if you're going to use one of those weapons, you probably should pick up this feat. So you get a bump to your strength or con. Once per turn when you hit a creature with an attack that deals bludgeoning damage. Doesn't say with a melee weapon or with a ranged weapon. It just says when you deal damage, that's bludgeoning damage. You can move it up to 5 feet to an unoccupied space if the target is no more than one size larger than you, and if you happen to hit them with a club or a sling, which both do bludgeoning damage, they're also going to be slowed. So you're going to push them, and they're going to be slowed, reducing their speed by 10 feet. And then you have this enhanced critical. So if you crit, then attack rolls against the creature have advantage until the start of your next turn. All nice things. The crit thing's not going to happen too often, but it is nice to have. But with pushing them back, that gets, you are no longer adjacent to them, and then they're slowed, so you can kind of run away, and they'll have to catch up to you if they want to get at you, but they're slowed, so their speed is going to be reduced a little bit. All right. The next one we have is the dueling fighting style here. And when you're holding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain +2 damage. So this is just something that might go well with that if you're thinking about just using a weapon in one hand, and that's it. And this goes good with, if you're just doing like sword and board and things like that. So this is just a good thing. It's kind of a good thing to have. All right, the next one, we're going to go all the way down to great weapon fighting. And that one, remember, I said Great Weapon Master. And that one I said you could use with the longbow because the longbow has the heavy property. So when you hit a creature with a weapon that has the heavy property as part of the attack action, you can cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target. The extra damage equals your proficiency bonus. Now, I know with Sharpshooter, they took like the +10 damage away. This is a way of getting kind of some of that damage back that you lost from Sharpshooter. It's also a way of getting damage back from the Great Weapon Master that used to be where you took 5 from your to hit and you got a +10 to damage. You also get an increase to your strength score, which doesn't necessarily help you with a longbow. So this is not the most, it's not the most advantageous of feats to take with that, but I mean, it is what it is. You don't get Hue with it either as the longbow because that only applies to a melee weapon. So if you wanted the extra damage, you could get the extra damage with this, with the heavy weapon mastery. And then you'd be taking a bump to your strength score. And unfortunately, that doesn't apply well with a lot of dex builds. So the next feat we're going to be going to is Mage Slayer. I always like these for these kind of melee weapon builds. It's not something I would take right away, but it will increase your strength or dex. A lot of these builds are based off of strength or dex. And then, when you damage a creature that's concentrating, it has disadvantage on saving throws to maintain the concentration. And then you get some extra bonus for saving throws that you're going to make that are intelligence, wisdom, or charisma based, because a lot of these builds are weak in intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. So something nice. It doesn't really have a lot to do with slow itself, but it does stack nicely with a lot of these martial type builds. All right, the next one we're going to talk about, and this is a really important one because there were a bunch of piercing weapon that had slow. So it's Piercer. Increase your strength or dex by 1. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals piercing damage, you can re-roll one of the attack's damage dice, and you must use the new roll. So that is a thing. That's good. That's automatic. It's only once per turn, but it is a thing. And then it has an enhanced crit. So when you crit with the weapon, you can roll 1 additional damage die when determining the extra piercing damage. So if you hit with the longbow or you hit with the light crossbow, then you're going to do piercing damage and you're going to slow because those have the slow thing. So that these kind of things just kind of stack up on top of each other. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is Savage Attacker, which is a origin feat. So you get this for free at first level. You get one of these. You're trained to deal particularly damaging strikes once per turn when you hit a target with a weapon. You can roll the weapon's damage twice and use either roll on the target. So that's a nice one to have. Lucky is also a nice one, but this kind of goes along with some of those weapons where you can just do a little bit of extra damage, and it's kind of a freebie. I like stacking these different types of things on top of the weapon masteries to make things kind of nastier. All right, the next one that we're going to talk about is Sentinel. And this one is an important one. And I think this one would go very well with the whip. So you can increase your strength or dex. Immediately after a creature within 5 feet of you takes the disengage action or hits a target other than you with an attack. So they have to be within 5 feet, but you can attack with a whip from 5 feet. You can make an opportunity attack against the creature. When you hit the creature with an opportunity attack, its speed becomes 0. So it doesn't really slow it, but it stops right then and there, and then it's slowed after that, because remember, slow lasts for a round. So it has to halt, and then it becomes slowed. So that's kind of a good combo with this. The next one, and this is a really important one as well, is Slasher. And here we are. All right, increases strength or dex by 1. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals slashing damage, and remember, the only one that we had on that list that did slashing damage was the whip, you can reduce the speed of that creature by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. The whip has slow, which also reduces their speed by 10 feet. So now we've reduced their speed by 20 feet. And it has the enhanced critical, so when you score a critical hit that deals slashing damage to a creature, it has disadvantage on attack rolls until the start of your next turn. So that's a little extra something. So that was our last feat that we're going to talk about with this. I'm not going to put Strike of the Giants in this. There's a couple of good ones in there. You could stack that on here, but I think Slasher is probably my favorite out of these because I'm really leaning towards the whip for this particular weapon mastery. So now we are going to talk about a species, and really only one species that helps to stack with the slow weapon mastery. All right, so the species race that we're going to talk about is the Goliath, and it is particularly the new 2024 Goliath, which got a huge bump. Huge buff, bump, boost, whatever you want to call it, because of this Giant's Ancestry ability, which I have a monk that's a Goliath, and he's a Hill Giant Goliath, and he is just nasty. I use these all the time. They are really great abilities. So the one that I am talking about here is if you are a Frost Giant Goliath. So you're descended from giants, choose one of the following abilities. You can use the benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So essentially, it's, you start out with 2 uses, then you get 3, and then 4. So Usually 3 or 4 is enough. I very rarely run out of these. And with the Frost Giant's Chill, here it is right here, when you hit a target with an attack roll and deal damage to it, so you have to hit, you got to deal damage, you can also deal 1d6 cold damage to the target and reduce its speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. So if we have a whip and we are a slasher who also is a Frost Giant Goliath, when we hit with the whip, slow, reduces speed by 10 feet. We're a slasher, reduce the speed by another 10 feet. That's 20 feet. And then we add the Frost Chill on top of that. That's 30 feet. Most creatures have a movement of 30 feet. They are now done. And then you get large form and powerful build. These don't necessarily add to it. I think the best thing from the large form is the increase to your speed. But I really like this Frost Chill with this because it stacks with all of this different stuff. All right, now we're going to talk about classes. So I want to concentrate on 3 different classes, just 3, and I'm going to hope my camera doesn't recognize that I'm holding 3 fingers up because it's an AI-based camera. But we're gonna focus on 3 different classes, and we're going to focus on 3 different classes and subclasses for those classes. So let's talk about the first one, and of course that's the fighter. So the fighter gets access to weapon masteries at first level right there. So you could choose any one of these weapon masteries that give you the slow weapon mastery. And then we're going to talk about the battle master, because the battle master has these maneuvers. Now there is not a maneuver that slows down the target more or reduces their speed. But one of the really good maneuvers here is trip. So you could hit somebody with a whip, you could reduce their speed by 10 feet, and then you do the trip attack. So when you hit a creature with an attack roll using a weapon or unarmed strike, you can expend 1 superiority die, and these work off superiority dice. So you get a certain number of superiority dice every short rest, I believe. Let's make sure here. Superiority dice, yeah, short or long rest, and they're all DH. You get 4 of them to start out with, and then you go from there. And when you use them, you just take a short rest and you get them back. So with this one, you add the die to the damage roll. If the target is large or smaller, it must succeed on a strength saving throw or have the prone condition. When your speed is reduced and you have the prone condition, it makes it worse. So because if you have the prone condition, it restricts your movement. Your only movement options are to crawl or to spend an amount of movement equal to half your speed rounded down to right yourself and thereby end your condition. If your speed is reduced to 0, you cannot right yourself. So if I'm using a whip, I am a Goliath. That's a Frost Giant Goliath. And I've got the slasher feat, that is 30 feet, gone. And now I've tripped you as well, which means that if you have a 30-foot speed, you are now stuck until that penalty goes away. You can't even stand up, so you can only crawl. And crawling is not fantastic. And then I have advantage on attack rolls against you as well. So that's I think trip is underestimated. I think it's a great ability that the Battle Master has. And then they have all of these other maneuvers that they can use, which I think are pretty awesome. So the next class that we are going to talk about is the Ranger. And of course, Rangers get access also to weapon masteries. So here we are, right here at first level, weapon masteries. There they are. And so you can take any of the weapons that you can use, and you can apply the slow if they have it. So you can use that weapon mastery if they have the slow. Now, this is a strange one, because I don't always go to this one, but I am going to concentrate on the Beastmaster, because you get this primal companion. You summon this primal beast, choose one of the stat blocks. So it's Beast of the Land, Beast of the Sea, Beast of the Sky. You can kind of determine what kind of animal it is, and then it's friendly. It does whatever you want, and then the beast in combat, so it can move and use its reaction on its own, but the only action it takes is dodge. You got to give it a bonus action to command it, which I never really like that, but it is what it is, and that's what it is. So you can also sacrifice one of your attacks when you take the attack action to command the beast to make the beast strike. So, so there is some action economy that is in this. It's not. I'm not a big fan of any of the Rangers. I don't think they did the Ranger a lot of justice. The Gloomstalker was awesome, but it was broken in 5e, and they've kind of fixed it. I still like the Hunter. Now, the Beast of Land with the slow mastery. If you've got a weapon that does a slow mastery, the Beast also has this Beast Strike, which means you get a bonus to hit, you do some damage. It can do bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage. Your feats don't apply to this thing, but if the beast moved at least 20 feet straight towards the target before it hit, it does extra damage, and the target is knocked prone if it's large or smaller. And there's no save for that, so it's just prone. That's it. So I think that's, again, if you hit something with a whip, and you happen to be a Goliath, and you happen to be a slasher, then it probably is not going to be getting up from that prone condition. So I think that the other beasts are just okay. The other abilities are just okay. Exceptional training, bestial fear, all that stuff is just okay. It's not fantastic, but I do like the Beastmaster for this, just for the Beast of the Land itself. Now, the last class we're going to be talking about, of course, is the Rogue. And Rogues also get access to weapon masteries. There they are at first level. And so they could use the slow if they can use the weapon. And they get to use all weapons that have either the finesse or light property. And guess what? The whip is a finesse weapon, so they can use a whip, which means they get access to slow. Now, I don't like any of these subclasses that are in here that they have here. However, I do like one of the older subclasses that still is useful and still goes along with this, and that subclass is the Swashbuckler. And they get the fancy footwork and the raucous audacity. So when you choose this archetype at 3rd level, you learn how to land a strike. During your turn, if you make a melee attack against a creature, that creature cannot make opportunity attacks against you for the rest of the turn. And then you've got this raucous audacity, so you can give yourself a bonus to initiative, and then you also gain an additional way to use your sneak attack. You don't need advantage on the attack roll to use your sneak attack against a creature if you are within 5 feet of it, and no other creature is within 5 feet of it. So I think this goes well with the whip itself. And then there's a whole bunch of other shenanigans you can use. But you could basically whip it, and then with the fancy footwork, run away. And it's not going to get any attacks against you. And you're going to get your sneak attack if nothing else is near it. And then it's slowed. So, and if you happen to be a Frost Giant Goliath and you happen to have Slasher and you're using the whip, so it's got 30-foot reduction to its speed, and you got the fancy footwork to get away, so you don't have to worry about using your bonus action to disengage or any of that. You just run away. And those all work great together. So those are the classes, the main classes that we have. There is one kind of off-color class that I want to talk about, and it's a very specific subclass of Warlocks, which is the Fathomless. And the reason I bring that up is because they get this thing called Tentacles of the Deep. So you could do, and it's a first level feature of the subclass, but subclasses now happen at 3rd level, so it becomes a 3rd level feature. You get it when you take the subclass. And so you would have to dip 3 levels into Warlock to get this, but you create this tentacle. You can make a melee spell attack against one creature within 10 feet. On a hit, it takes a D8, and its speed is reduced by 10 feet. So now it's a melee spell attack, against it. So, you know, that is the thing. When you create the tentacle, on as a bonus action on each turn, you can move the tentacle up to 30 feet and repeat the attack. So once you've summoned it, then you can use your bonus action every turn to do this, and it does this reduction. So, you know, you could have the tentacle attack, you could attack with a whip. If you're a Goliath, then you get that, and if you're a slasher, you get that. So you could actually, with this, reduce the speed by 40 feet, which is just about anything. So those are the different classes that we're going to talk about. Now we're going to talk a little bit about just some a smattering of spells that we can use with the slow feat, or things that I think synergize well with the slow feat. All right, and I just realized I said the slow feat, and what I really meant was the slow weapon mastery. So the first spell we're going to talk about, and these aren't necessarily things that your character is going to do that's wielding weapons with the slow weapon mastery, but these will stack with it, and other characters could have this. And of course, the first thing we're going to talk about is Ray of Frost. Great cantrip. You make a ranged spell attack on a hit. It's a D8 cold damage, and the speed is reduced by 10 feet until the start of your next turn, which stacks with all the other stuff. So you could hit it with a whip. If you're a slasher and a frost giant Goliath, that's 30 feet, and then somebody else hits it with Ray of Frost, and guess what? It's now 40 feet. So you could really do some slowing effects with these. All right. And then I'm just going to mention these offhand because I like Ray of Frost. The other ones are Earth Tremor, Grease, Slow. Those are good ones because they will reduce speed. They will knock things prone. And knocking things prone along with slowing them down are all great combos. So all in all, I think that the slow weapon mastery is really great. We gave it a B+. I think it's an awesome mastery. It synergizes with a lot of different feats and a lot of different classes, weapons, lots of synergistic effects that can happen with it, where you can just keep adding on top of the effect that happens with the slow. All right, that is a video that I have for everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed, and I will catch everybody later.